Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. My name is Kevin Nakagawa and I'm the owner and the designer of the Stampscapes line of images. And in this video I want to go into the general concept of what the line is all about. Stampscapes is a line of individual nature stamps that when combined together form seamless scenes. I want to go into just the general concept of scene building and how you go about doing that. I'm going to be using some dye-based inks and glossy cardstock. You can use other types of medium, but that's what I'm going to be using here. Let's just go right into it. This is the Lakeside Cove stamp. Stamps come in both mounted and unmounted form. I'm inking up this stamp right here, getting good, even coverage. And placement, this is just a quarter page cardstock. What is that, 4.25 by 5.5 inches. You can place this wherever you want to go. I'll do some different compositions so you can see some different applications with the same imagery. Okay, good pressure in the center of the image. Alright, we have our main subject matter here now. Alright. Now, one of the things about scenic stamping is you generally want to have some, to create some depth within a scene. That doesn't mean that you can't use these images just as a singular impression and to make some kind of card around it, maybe put a saying above it or below it, frame it off, mat it off with different types of cardstock. But on this video, I'm going to show you how you would go in and blend different types of imagery into it. I've stamped it off towards a little bit off-center, towards the top of the card right here. And what I can do is I can stamp in some clouds. Now I'm just going to be going in and using black ink just so you can see that the best on this video. But that's not to say that you can't stamp these different images out in different colors. Say, for example, maybe using a light blue or something like that for this cloud stamp right here. Okay, so we've stamped some background in here. I've given this cloud stamp a couple different impressions in the background there. I've overlapped one impression to the next, and also I didn't have to do any careful types of masking around here because those trees are solid black. And I'll go into that a little bit more as we get into this video here. Alright, I've addressed the sky, kind of the midground here. Now let's get into some of the foreground. There's all kinds of different things you can do. You can leave it open if you want to, just to create, an entire body of water. But let's say I wanted to create some close rocks in the foreground here. This stamp right here is the Boulders with Lichen. I can stamp this right off the bottom of the page here. And that creates kind of a rock where you're maybe, as a viewer, you're standing on, looking out into the distance here. And let's get into some other types of foreground imagery. This is the Reed's large stamp here, and let's go for several impressions of it. You'll notice that I'm stamping it, re-inking, going for another impression, re-inking. But I'm changing the angle of it, but I've also changed the height of it as well, just so that it doesn't look like the same image used over and over as if I stamped it in a straight line like that. Let's do some more on this side of the card. And go for something like that. Used multiple times. And hopefully when you do something like that, you won't see where one impression ends and the next one begins by changing the angle and overlapping. Now, a lot of people come into scenic stamping, if you're new to it, you're coming to it quite often with kind of one mindset in terms of the application of impressions. A lot of times people see designs, or when they're getting into scenic stamping, if they haven't done it before, and they're wanting to match up the edges perfectly with the next design that you're using. But these designs are tonal, and they've been designed to be overlapped so that hopefully you won't have to do a lot of careful masking. And by overlapping your imagery it'll look a little bit more seamless than trying to be right, you know, perfect in terms of placement. So I think that kind of a little bit more of a free-form style or application of the impressions gives you a little bit more of a seamless end result. Okay, now this is the water pattern, and as you can see, I'm inking it up, and I'm putting some impressions on the outside edge of the card, like that. I like to kind of frame my compositions off a little bit, and by overlapping this water pattern stamp, you don't get kind of a, you know, a real stacked, I call it kind of like brick lane technique, you know, where you're going edge to edge or something like that, you know, where it looks real squared off, okay? So what you want to do is you kind of want to overlap, maybe use the second impression to create kind of lighter impressions of it. Maybe in some of these areas right here where there's shadows, you know, I can put a few more impressions, and this stamp here, this water texture, can almost be used as a shading device. And that kind of creates this little framing around it. Now, I'm not going to go into the coloring of these images right now. I'll do that in a separate video. I just want to show you how these scenes all kind of blend together. Now let's go into some other types of applications or compositions using the same imagery. Okay? This is, again, is the Lakeside Cove Large, and on this scene right here, I've stamped it right in the middle of the card. If I want to have more sky featured, I can stamp it lower in the composition, but let's say I wanted to stamp it on a horizontal, okay? Now, even if I stamped it right in the middle, this is about 4 inches across right here, and of course this one right here is 5.5 inches across. So I have this area out here that I need to fill in. Well, just like that reed stamp where I've layered it on there, I'm going to ink up this side of the image and blend it in with that first impression. Okay, now, just in general, I would say that when you're overlapping your imagery, you want to go about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch in, maybe. Maybe a 1/2 inch would be a little bit too far, but maybe a 1/4 inch into the scene and a 1/4 inch over this one, over your previous impression. Ink up generally more than you think you're going to need, because, you know, one of the things about this, sometimes people kind of measure there and they say, okay, I need to ink up right to here, and then they stamp it out, and then they have this blank area right here. So I always recommend going a little bit farther than you'd want, and then you won't have that problem, or potentially that problem. Okay, I'm just eyeballing it right here. I don't have to go with a stamp positioner. And just lay it right down in there. And by doing this overlapping, you won't get images where you get a bunch of gaps in between everything. Everything blends together nice and seamlessly like that, okay? And again, I mean, on this scene right here, I use that rock down here. I don't have to do that. Maybe I go with something else. Let's just add some reeds down here. And again, I would, you know, you can do monochromatic, just black and white scenes if you want to. But again, I would probably finish this off with some other types of colors. I like to use dye-based inks and kind of a sponging technique. Little figurines in here. These kind of create a nice focal point. Let's create a, I don't know, put this around here. A lot of times people get to a scene like this and they build the composition, the landscape, and they have these little critters like this, or in this case it's a little canoeist, and they're saying, where should I put this? And they're looking at from this to this, and I always say, move it right in front of your card so that you can see, and make it more of a visual decision than a conceptual one where you're looking at it over here and looking at, you know, back at the card. So anyway, why don't we put this like right up here? In this case, use light even pressure for a small design. And let's say you wanted to have some birds up in the sky. This is the gull stamp. You do something like that. And I don't know, maybe I wanted to create a little bit more texture on the bottom of the scene. You know, on that last scene I used some of those reed stamps. Maybe I'll go for just some of these little leaf textures down here off this other stamp, but I'll just use it for the leaves. I won't use it for the rocks. I mean, you certainly could use the rocks in there as well. But this just creates a little bit more texture for your scene. Like that, and you have something like that. You can finish it all with blues for the sky, I don't know, blue-greens for the water, something like that nature. Okay, now, let's change the format of this again, where I've used the majority of this stamp. The ideal stamp, in my opinion, in terms of landscaping, is one where you can use it by itself or in conjunction with other stamps, but you can also just change the way that you've stamped it, and you can give your composition a real different look. Let's just create kind of an inlet here, changing the height of this, but just using the sides of this coming into the scene. Create something like that. And again, you can use your water texture stamp in there. And again, you can use this stamp in blues or something like that to create a little bit more depth and layering through color. But the water stamp is a good one to kind of blend all the different imagery together. And in this case, I'm using it real light in the middle here. Maybe to create a little passage of light that's coming through here. And I'm doing this in black right now just for this video's sake too, so that you can kind of see the shapes a little bit more on this video. If I did it in a light blue, I'm not quite sure how it would read. Okay. Okay, and I don't know, create this little guy down here. Kind of creates a nice little focal point. If you want to use the reed stamp again or something like that, we can stamp it down here at the bottom. Maybe you're looking off of a cliff or perch of some sort, looking down there. I think this having something in the foreground kind of frames things off a little bit. If I leave a little gap in there, it kind of creates a little passageway for the eye to enter the scene. But anyways, that's the general concept of how to layer and overlap your imagery. Okay? Now there are instances where you can do some careful masking, but for the most part these designs have been, you know, drawn to be overlapped with one another and to hopefully not create the need for any careful masking or really careful placement of the imagery. I find that things, again, blend better if you kind of overlap things with one another. You're overlapping the image with itself, you're overlapping the images with other stamps, going right over the top of that, and it gives a nice continuity to the overall. And that creates a little bit more of a seamless scene. And then again, when you're applying different colors onto these scenes, you know, with the use of dye-based inks, embossing types of applications with watercolors, Copic markers, and whatnot, all of those colors blended onto these scenes, again, that will, you know, create another layer of continuity between all the different images with each other. So that in turn will blend things together, but just with the basic foundation of the images, by being able to blend them together, that should create a nice seamless scene to as a foundation for what other types of media that you're going to finish these cards off with. Okay, I'll get into some other different compositions and whatnot in other videos. Okay, thanks for watching.